Now, you might think that I'm just straight up crazy holding 5 litres of oil like this. It's about 5 kilos, but this is how much weight I've actually managed to lose in the last 50 or so days. So it's like, give or take, it's 5 litres, 5 kilos of oil. Maybe there ought to be a 6th litre one here, I don't know. Anyway, you see, the thing is, there is so much voodoo associated with losing weight. And when I decided I'd have a more scientific approach to this, a more thermodynamic mass balance type approach. And it was actually really interesting. But anyway, first of all, when I was young, trying to regulate, I could eat whatever I wanted, never gained weight, never lost weight, fantastic. Now when you get to about 35, you start realizing, this isn't quite the way it was 10 years ago. And about a decade later, my weight sort of ticks up to about 95 kilos, which is somewhat over 200 pounds, and that's it. It's like, no, I've got to get a grip on this. And so I actually started looking at it in more thermodynamic terms. What actually regulates your weight and such like. And yeah, it was really interesting. So I'm going to give you some of the things that I worked out and how I lost all of this. Now, the first thing is that if I don't do just the typical energy requirements for my body for one day, I need about half a kilo of oil or a kilo of sugar, right? That's the sort of energy content, the energy input my body needs per day. So if I absolute starvation diet, right, only water, then this is, I would lose approximately this much weight in 10 days, more or less. However, it doesn't quite, if you want to lose weight by dieting, it's got to be comfortable, right? This took about 50 days. So this is, starving yourself for 10 days is just crazy, and it'll trash your health, because as your body gets desperate for the things that it really needs, it'll start cannibalizing your body to do it. And that's just really bad. So the maximum you can lose per day is about half a litre or half a kilo. I was averaging about 100 grams per day. So, I would lose that much in just under a week and a kilo in just over a week. And, so from the second you start, you can have a rough calculation of how long this is going to take. And for me, this was a couple of months. If I want to lose the full 10 kilos, which I will do, I'll come to why I stopped here towards the end, then, it's going to take me like 4 months or something. So the first thing you got to do is sort of be psychologically prepared for how long you're going to have to do this. In fact, there's a guy called Boogie 2988, and he sort of resolved to also get his weight under control, apart from he weighs about 200 kilos, which if you think about it, that's basically twice my body weight. And it's when you look at it like that, you realize that fat people have to be immensely strong, and if I put on a backpack that weighs half of my body weight, it's difficult to move around. So just to carry around that extra weight means you've got to do lots of exercise. But the thing is, if you want to lose 100 kilos, a sensible weight loss, which is say 100 grams a day or something, then you're looking at 1,000 days to lose 100 kilos, which is 3 years. Right? This is not something that you can sort of do in the short term. If you're going to commit to actually losing the weight, you've got to be in it for the long game. And, I mean, you are somewhat helped out if you're very fat to begin with, because, like I was saying, you're also very strong, which means that your capacity to burn calories is actually higher. Once you get down to my sort of size, sensible weight loss is like 100 grams per day or something. So, there is a certain energy requirement that your body's going to get through per day. And the only way that you can lose weight is to actually expend more energy than you consume. It's the only way to do it. What your body is essentially doing is the same as an outboard motor. It's burning oil, and as it's doing so, you're breathing it out through your mouth. Carbon dioxide, or fat is used. It's turned into carbon dioxide by burning the oxygen in the air within your body. And so the air content is about 80% of it is just nitrogen. That has no interaction with anything. About 20% of what you breathe in is oxygen. And when you breathe it in, 20% oxygen. When you breathe it out, burns a little bit of oil or sugar or something. And it comes out as 15% oxygen and 5% carbon dioxide. And that turns out to be really constant, that if I'm doing exercise or if I'm just lying around, the ratio of carbon dioxide to oxygen in my exhaled breath is more or less constant. So the only way that you can get rid of more carbon dioxide and burn more stuff is to breathe more. Now, it turns out that you can't just breathe more and lose the weight, because it turns out it's the buildup of carbon dioxide in your body which stimulates your breathing in the first place. So the only way to actually stimulate your breathing to go faster is to build up more, is to actually burn more stuff in your body, which is basically exercise, right? So that's one of the ways that you can burn the extra calories, is by doing exercise. The other way that you can lose weight is to keep your lifestyle the same, but to consume less. And so you do the back of the envelope calculations. I'm going to say I'm going to keep my daily routine about the same. So I'm going to consume about the same amount of energy per day. And that means that I can maybe reduce the number of calories that I intake by a third, which basically means, you just got to reduce what you eat by a third per day, which I'll come back to that shortly. The other way is to do more exercise. Now, you'll recall what I said, that when you're doing exercise, you're breathing out about the same amount of carbon dioxide. The ratio of carbon dioxide to oxygen in your exhaled breath is about the same as when you're just sitting around. So the best metric for how much weight you're losing, as it were, is how much you're breathing. And it turns out if you get on an exercise bike, doing aerobic type exercise, you breathe about 3 to 4 times faster than you do if you're just sitting around. So let's just say 24 hours of standard metabolism, that's how much energy I consume in a day. So if I get on the exercise bike for 1 hour per day, and that would be worth an extra 4 hours of regular metabolism, as it were. So let's call it 5. So it's about 5 parts in 30. It's about 1 in 6. It's about 16%, give or take. Right? That would be 1 hour on the exercise bike per day. Only increases the amount of calories you burn by about 16% over the day. So that was the initial calculations that I did, and looked at it like that. Spending an hour on an exercise bike per day is quite a commitment, and whilst I did it sort of occasionally, it's quite effective. But by far the more obvious thing is just to reduce what you eat. And for me, there are things that I think give me, seeing as you're in this for the long game, you've got to decide what gives you sort of quality of life, as it were. And for me, I like chocolate, coffee, and drinking. right? Those are three that I'm really not keen on ditching any of those. And so the most obvious way to massively reduce your calorie intake is to become friends with salad, because you just take a green salad. Well, look at what a green salad looks like once it's dried out. There's basically nothing there, right? So you can almost eat as much salad as you want. It won't do anything. And so I would sort of have not a green salad, but a salad with some other stuff in it for lunch. Something very small in the evening, and that was basically it for the day, other than the coffee, the chocolate, and and some beer or wine or whatever. And from the second I started this, it was a pretty decent loss of 100 grams per day. Now the amazing thing is, right, for the first week, there's all sorts of psychological issues that your previous lifestyle is what you become habitualized to. So, you want a pizza in the evening or whatever, it doesn't matter, right? You've got a habit, and there are two things. You've got to sort of psychologically break the habit, and then you've got to become acclimatized to the new normal. And that takes about a week. For me, it did. And so after about a week, I was hungry for the first week. Then you sort of become more, it just becomes the new normal, right? And after that, it becomes a lot easier. And so I actually had all these little notes of physiological changes that I was noticing in my body. Now it turns out, when you get a thermal camera on the human body, it's incredibly easy to see where the fat is, because it's basically the stuff that's cold, right? And so for me and most guys, it turns out you get this slab of fat right on the front of the belly. Okay, so what you've got here is the human body in the infrared, and what I'm going to show you is how the body actually dumps the heat when it's doing exercise. So I mean, this is the more or less at rest body, the head and the shoulders, they're actually putting out quite a lot of heat. And you even see where I've got some fat here, because it's really quite well insulated compared to the belly button there. And it's very easy to tell. You sort of pinch it and see how much there is between your fingers. And for me, it was getting quite chunky, this slab of fat on the front. And after about, 3 weeks, not only had it diminished visibly, it had changed texture, become much softer. And then after about 45 days, there was a sort of change in my mouth, which the tongue was more adhering to the side of the mouth than it had done previously, which I was getting a little, maybe it's time to sort of take a break from this for a bit. And about 10 days after that, I started getting, if I was sitting around for a long time and would suddenly get up, I'd get cramp in my legs, which, you look it up and it says it's likely to be magnesium deficiency or something. So at that point, I thought I'd take a break. And there's a good reason for me taking a break at that point, because that means I've lost 5 kilos at this point. I'll lose another 5, which would mean I've overall lost 10% of my body weight, which I'd be happy with. But you'll recall that I said there's basically 2 ways of doing this. You've got to reduce the calorie intake, or you've got to do more exercise, or live a more active lifestyle. Now, honestly, for the most part, I'm so busy that you spending an hour on the exercise bike is, especially if it's per day, would be tough. And actually, I should say something about the exercise, right? Remember I said an hour on the exercise bike only is about the equivalent of reducing your calorie intake by 15%. That's assuming that it's just the exercise that you do while you're on the bike. In reality, there is probably a recovery session on that where your body is actually doing stuff to recover that's maybe worth 2 or 3 times the actual work that you did. So an hour of exercise per day is probably a pretty decent way of doing stuff. But anyway, so living a more active lifestyle would certainly help. Now, I'm going to America shortly, in the next 10 days or so. And while there, I'm going to do all sorts of stuff. I'm going to see the solar eclipse, obviously, the solar roadways, maybe the Hyperloop track, measure the radiation on the Californian beaches, and also, right, because I've done this before, I did this before several times actually, over a decade ago. And I took loads of pictures while I was there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go round and sort of see if I can find these things, because this has been the hottest decade on record. So I'm going to go back to these places and see if I can find the same place again and sort of see how America has changed over the last decade. And like I was saying, I've got pictures from absolutely everywhere. They're all going to be out in the Rocky Mountains to the Pacific region. But interestingly, every previous time I've done this, I lived almost exclusively on fast food. And there's a very good reason for that. It's not because I've got any particular taste for fast food. But if you want to move around a lot, fast food's actually pretty good because it's quick. You get toilets and you get Wi-Fi, which is, it turns out it's basically a killer combination. So it's one of those bizarre things that I would go around for over a month eating mostly things like McDonald's and Burger King and Wendy's and whatever. And I would come back kilos lighter than when I went out. Now, most of that is because for that time, you're hugely active. Basically, whenever the sun is up, you're active, you're moving around. And yeah, I would be doing lots of hiking and that sort of thing. And so yeah, I'm tempted to try this sort of McDonald's diet to see, right? The thing is, if there comes a point when you sort of plateau out irrespective. So I'm just curious, you know, 10 years ago, I was another 5 kilos lighter. I'm curious to see if, you know, making no effort to cut calories or anything like that, just living an active lifestyle, which is something I really can't do when I'm working here, whether I just lose the rest, even though I'm eating junk food all the time. So, yeah, these are my sort of dieting experiences, which I thought I'd share with you because it's actually really quite fun at this point, you know, just to look back. I mean, this is the amazing thing. When I went and bought all of this stuff and you actually put it in your backpack and you realize this is how much I weighed daily, and you pick up the backpack and yeah, it's an effort to carry the extra weight. And I can also tell you, I mean, just after losing, by the time I was here, I felt much lighter and bouncier. And I think part of that is the physique was carrying the extra weight around for some time. So you're actually still quite strong, relatively, but your power to weight ratio changes as you lose the weight. And yeah, I felt much fitter and bouncier for merely losing 5 kilos. So yeah, I mean, I guess there are two key points here that I would like to share with people, my own personal experience. The first is, of course, losing weight is actually pretty hard, right? If you've never had to seriously try to do it before, you know, I mean, when I was young, I just sort of laughed at it, you know, nah, it's dead easy, there's no problem. And then you actually try it, and it takes, you've got to be able to do it for weeks. And if that's something you're really not prepared for when you first try it, in fact, I should actually dispel some other very quick myths about dieting. And one of the ones that's very common is that if you start doing exercise, you put on a couple of kilos because you're turning fat into muscle. And the reason this just crashes and burns almost immediately is if you look up the density of fat, it's 0.8, 0.9 kilos per litre or something. You take a look at muscle, it's only 10, maybe 20% denser, which means that if you put on just 1 extra kilo, if it was indeed you were turning fat into muscle, that would mean you're turning like 5 litres of oil into fat. in a very short period of time, which is it's just not possible. Your body takes quite a long time to put on 5 kilos of muscle, and that's even assuming it's possible, because muscle is mostly protein. It contains nitrogen, whereas fat contains none of it. So there's all sorts of problems with that. What it probably is if you've not done any exercise for a while, your body is this temporary store of energy called glycogen. It's sort of oligomerized sugar. It's stored in the liver. And if you start doing exercise, you probably start storing more of it. And whilst glycogen is a very good temporary store of energy, it's not very energy dense. So remember what I was saying, that your energy requirements are half a litre of oil per day, a kilo of sugar, or it's about 3 kilos of glycogen, because glycogen, it comes with loads of water and whatever. It's necessary to have it in your body because this is the very labile energy that your body can use quickly, but it's just not a very energy dense way of storing it. So what it probably is, this sort of weight gain when you start doing exercise, is, my guess would be glycogen. I've got nothing solid on it. You take a look at the mass balance, it really can't be that you're turning oil into muscle or fat into muscle. So another one that's really common is this idea that you can actually determine where you lose your fat. And this is just a complete non-starter. I mean, you get these, they tend to focus on women for some reason, that, you could burn off your buttock fat or something like that. And no, you absolutely just cannot determine where your body is going to take the fat that it's going to turn into whatever, first of all, some sort of sugar that'll turn into glycogen. That's all done by blood flows and the such like. None of that is going right. You can determine where you put muscle on. If I start lifting lots of weights, yeah, I can determine where I put on muscle. I can't determine where I actually burn the fat. So if you want to get rid of fat on your belly or something, doing sit-ups will do nothing for you. It'll get you more muscle, it won't burn the fat. So I guess these are my dieting experiences, and even though this would be a modest success for a lot of people, but it serves important roles. So, I mean, first of all, I was never greatly overweight, but having just lost these 5 kilos, I feel much better for it, much lighter and bouncier and all that sort of thing. But there's also the psychological issue of proving to yourself that you can do it, that you actually have this level of control. And there are things that actually make that a lot harder. I mean, if you're sort of around, if there are other people around sort of socially pressuring you to eat something, if someone is cooking for you and the such like, you sort of lose control much more of what you eat. And that's a big problem. So I mean, for me, it was really quite easy because I've got none of that. So after that, it's just a simple matter of, can you keep it up for 50 days? And the answer is, yeah, I could quite easily do this for an extended period of time. I stopped because, paused, I think would be the right word, just to let the body sort of re-equilibrate. But yeah, it's really recommended. So, like I was saying, there are points down this weight loss where you have different sort of attitudes, and by the time you get up to 5 kilos, an element of the arrogance kicks in that if I can do it, why can't everyone else? In many ways, it's kind of like getting up, climbing a mountain. It's a long commitment, but having actually got somewhere, there is a real sense of achievement, and that's this is another reason why I would strongly recommend that even if you're only going to lose a few kilos, you feel lighter, fitter, bouncier, and a sense of achievement that you can control it, as well as all of the health benefits. So yeah, I would strongly recommend it on so many levels.